What is up, everybody, and welcome to Cartridge Talks. In this episode, my good friend Ryan and I are going to examine the effectiveness of the 300 AAC Blackout versus the 223 in an effort to answer a single question.
Are these adequate for deer?
Let's find out.
Now, a few caveats before we begin. First things first, box-posted muzzle velocities, box-posted ballistic coefficients when we're tabulating our drop and drift and energy figures. We're also going to set a base weight of 8 pounds per rifle to keep things even-steven, and we're going to be shooting into permagel. While an imperfect ballistic solution, it is a consistent one, and you can see the bullets.
Now let's head to the range and see what these things can do.
All right, I'm first on the bench here with the 300 AAC. I'm going to start with the 150 grain Federal Power Shock. Let's load up, send one down, see what happens. Color me impressed. 22.5 inches of penetration on that block. This is starting to look like a pretty impressive little situation.
Is the 223 adequate for deer? We're about to find out. First up, we have Federal Fusion 62 grainers coming out the tube. Let's send it and see what it does. All right, this is a bonded bullet doing bonded bullet things. This thing drove very deep, expanded exceptionally. I mean, we're looking at 17.5 inches of penetration. I'd say this had enough gas to get the job done.
Next in the magazine is the Barnes 110 grain TAC TX on all copper loading. Let's chamber up and send a round down range. Here again, 22.5 inches of penetration, a pretty spectacular wound channel, and a characteristic copper mushroom.
The ability for a bolt to drive deep is critically important if you're going to shoot a 223 at deer, and that's what Barnes TSX bullets are known for. Right now we've got the 55 grainer heading down range. Anxious to see how it does. All right, 55 grains of fury here. This thing did a fantastic job. 21.25 inches of penetration, excellent expansion, great disruption. I mean, I'd say for a 223, it's about as good as you can expect.
And we're back.
Yes, we are.
Is that too much?
No, that was great, Mark.
All right, well, let's talk shootability.
All right, so what is shootability? Shootability is a measurement and a metric that we've assigned possibly haphazardly to help us determine how controllable these rifles are during the recoil sequence. We tabulate this in foot-pounds of recoil energy. Now, if you've ever shot an AR before, they're generally very forgiving, and in the 223, we're coming out with 3.71 foot-pounds of recoil energy. I mean, that's minuscule. The 300 AAC is coming in at a whopping 5.57 foot-pounds. And I guess we have to assign a winner to this category, and because the 300 AAC has more, that actually means that the 223 is the winner.
Now, neither of these cartridges are known to be shoulder crunchers. In fact, that's part of their appeal and why a lot of people select them for various tasks. But like you said, Ryan, if we're going by the numbers, 223.
Winner. Now, Mark, 223 has been around a long time. 300 AAC is actually a relatively new cartridge on scene. How does this bode for the 300 AAC versus 223 from an accessibility standpoint?
Ryan, when we're talking accessibility, which we're defining as the total number of factory offerings from the 6 major ammunition manufacturers, so we're talking Hornady, Barnes, Federal, Winchester, Remington, and Nosler, the 223 is coming in with a total of 87 factory offerings. The 300 AAC Blackout, 33. That's a lot less.
It is a lot less, but they're kind of two different cartridges.
They are. They're very different. They're both very versatile, but they live in different camps. They have different homes.
I agree.
But by the numbers that we set, 223. So we covered accessibility, which I always feel kind of dovetails right into versatility in a lot of ways, Ryan. How versatile are these cartridges?
Well, they're two really different cartridges. And so unpacking this a little bit, 223, it's a long-time military cartridge. It's a phenomenal varminting cartridge, a great recreation cartridge if you're gonna shoot like IDPA or USPSA multi-gun. I mean, a staple. 300 AAC is a little bit more
Specialized.
yeah, right? So subsonic application for use with suppressors, or in a supersonic application, it's a pretty good big game hunting round, but there is a little bit of blend there. If we're looking at these two cartridges and what they can do and what they can't do, we look at the 223 first and foremost as one being on scene for a very long time, having a huge bullet weight range variety, 35 grains to 77 grains. And within that, varmint bullets, full metal jackets, long range match profile bullets for doing long distance shooting, whether that's in a law enforcement or military application or recreational target shooting. 300 AAC is a little bit different, 110 grains on the low end, 220 on the top. That 220 on the top is almost always reserved for subsonic application, which is something the 223 really doesn't bring to the table. But again, if we start unpacking the numbers, the different types of bullets that we have there, 223 is going to take this one again, but they're kind of doing different things.
They're doing different things. In some ways, I feel like this one is optimized in certain cases to go light and fast, and this one's optimized to go big and slow.
Yep, I agree with you completely.
Now, part of versatility are the bullets that you can use for the applications that both these cartridges are great at, Ryan. How many bullet offerings do we have here?
Well, in 300 AAC, 23 unique styles, to 223's 49. But as we said earlier, 223's been on scene a little bit longer, and it kind of does some different things. But in context, we're talking about big game application. Are these enough for deer? We're gonna unpack 300 AAC a little bit and look at it as somewhat of a ballistic twin to 30-30 Winchester, which nobody would debate as being adequate for deer, certainly is. 223 is a little bit on the fringe. Now, I've killed deer with a 223 and it was outstanding, but we were very specific about bullet selection there. And 300 AAC kind of caters to that a little bit better, a bit more of a big game application. 223, you're gonna have to look a little bit harder, dig a little bit deeper to find the right projectile for big game hunting. What's cool about them is they both occupy the same weapon system, and so really, they're all winners in the versatility category. But by our metrics, 223 wins this one.
Like you said, it's on the fringe. I feel a lot of people feel that it's inadequate. Certain states don't even allow the 223 for deer hunting. But I've always asked myself, should people think that way about this cartridge?
Well, that depends.
Cue the gel. Let's find out.
Are you ready?
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Pump the brakes, Boardman. Before we start talking about what these bullets do when they hit the jello, what do they do when they fly through the air? I'm talking drop and drift.
We're talking drop and drift, and your 300 AAC Blackout drops kind of like a rock, Ryan. At 300 yards, you've got 10.9 MOA of drop, 4.6 MOA of windage correction, and you've got 602.2 foot-pounds of energy. The 223, in contrast, 3.2 MOA of drop, 2.7 MOA of windage correction, and you've got 659.8 foot-pounds of energy on target. Again, the 223 is coming out on top.
I don't know, man. I mean, you're talking about like 50 foot-pounds of energy. Yes, this thing drops like the proverbial rock, but it's a 30 caliber projectile. It's 150 grains. You're shooting a 62 grain projectile, a little pipsqueak.
That thing is going low and slow like a Ronco rotisserie.
Oh my gosh.
Hot and fast. All right, Ryan, why don't you break out your Popeel Pocket Fisherman and reel in a little terminal performance.
Oh, Boardman, the Popeel Pocket Fisherman. Well, all I'm gonna say is that my low and slow 300 AC firing a 150 grain Federal Power Shock absolutely roasted your little 223.
It did quite well.
At least in regards to penetration. 22.5 inches from the face of the block to where the bullet comes to an at-rest position. A few things I've got going for me here. Okay, Popeel Pocket Fisherman. I've got bullet mass, I've got frontal area, and I've got a wider, deeper wound channel.
I mean, you look at this and there really is not, a strong comparison to be made, or maybe there is a strong comparison to be made. The 300 AAC did a lot more. At 100 yards, I know what I'm gonna reach for. Now, that said, I'm actually quite impressed with the 223 as well. 17.5 inches of penetration, pretty darn good permanent wound cavity, considering. And I don't know, I wouldn't not shoot it at a deer at 100 yards.
Would you use a Papio Pocket Fisherman on a bass tournament?
No.
Papio Pocket Fisherman, Ronco rotisserie. 300 AAC wins this part of terminal ballistics.
And maybe that's the most important.
Maybe.
Copper it is.
Copper it is, Mark. Copper it is. Copper, see you on the periodic table. I'll see you later. 300 AAC pulled away with this one.
It did, it did. What are you working with over there?
Well, exactly the same amount of penetration I was working with the lead core bullet at 22.5 inches.
Quite impressive. Now, it's interesting that you got the same amount of penetration because in the 223, I gained a little bit. I'm looking at 23.5, I believe.
It's like 21.25. But...
Yeah, 21.25, but who's counting? You are, damn it. 21.25. It's still more than 17.5, and I look at this and I go, that would kill a deer just fine.
That is remarkably improved over the lead version, and that is the bullet that I killed a whitetail with, and it was very dead.
Yeah, this is the Barnes TSX.
That's right.
Out of a Federal Premium loading, and I'd say we got premium performance.
Yeah. I have to say too, going back on the winner of this contest, which is 300 AAC, this is a 110 grain copper projectile. So I took 40 grains of mass out of the equation, ended up with the same penetration, ended up with a larger wound cavity. If this doesn't spell copper as a recipe for success in this application, I don't know what does. Premier hunting bullet right here, 110 Barnes.
Curiously, I actually backed off on grain weight, going from 62 to 55, but got more penetration.
Copper.
It did well.
I may have been tooting my horn a little prematurely there, Mark, because we do have to tally the winning votes here.
Let's do it.
So for shootability,
223.
for accessibility,
223.
for versatility,
223.
for drop and drift,
223.
but for terminal performance in 2 half-point categories, Mark, 300 Blackout and 300 Blackout. That's 1 full point.
At the end of the day, when you're talking about shooting deer at approximately 100 yards, which I think both these cartridges, that's about the limit that you might want to stretch it. You might be able to do a little more either way, but what really matters, and it's the terminal performance. You've got a pretty versatile cartridge on your hand.
Did you just decree 300 Blackout the winner of this entire competition, despite 223 absolutely having more in its category bank?
Absolutely not, because I'm more than impressed with the
Okay.
performance of the 223, and I think this is an excellent display of what it can do, which is a lot, and it can be a very effective deer cartridge.
Fair.
And if you want to use it for a lot of additional activities, you've got a pretty versatile cartridge on your hands.
That's pretty fair. All that being said, Mark, I suppose we do have to put a crown on this king, and it is in fact 223 Remington.
It's a fine cartridge, Ryan.
I'm conflicted.
Why?
I don't know, I'm just being a contrarian.
Well, you like to do that.
Yeah, that's true. On this episode of Cartridge Talks, it was 223. And if you want to hear more about this particular head-to-head, tune into the Vortex Nation podcast. Boardman and I are going to do microsurgery on these blocks, pull the bullets out, take a look at them. And we also love you to chime in. Tell us what you want to see. Drop a comment below. Tune into the next episode of Cartridge Talks, and thank you for watching.